Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is the story I'm telling myself. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the story I'm telling myself. And you came to the right episode because Myra is here to talk with us about something we all experience. And you're not only going to recognize yourself in her story, but she is going to unlock exactly the steps that you could take to release yourself from that external validity comparison trap that has you stuck. But before we get into today's content, let's do a little intro. So if you are with us live today, thank you. We love it when you are in the comments live. We do this show for you. We love the energy that you bring. So please hop in the comments. Welcome Myra to the show. Welcome one another to the show. And, keep posting throughout because we love reading your comments and we will be talking with you and to you throughout the show. And while they are doing that, Myra, it's your turn. Tell everybody who you are.
Well, first of all, thank you, Rita. Thank you so much for having me. And when I learned about your show, I was like, that's the kind of podcast that I would love to be on because, well, first of all, the title says itself, the story we're telling ourselves. And there's lots of stories we tell ourselves, and I'm about to tell you my story. And I appreciate this quality level of conversation because I don't think many people gets to hear it. And there's enough noise about the business, but very rarely we get to hear someone talk about their experience, their back history of what led them to get there. And with me, I'm appreciative because I've in the last, I would say 10 years, going through lots of different evolution in my story and my business and everything. And one of the things that I've learned is that your story is the most important asset in your life, whether it's business or through going through career transitions, name it. It's the most important asset that you can own. And I think that for me, coming to this podcast gave me a gift of just even listening to myself. And sometimes you forget what have led you to the transformation, right? So it's nice to be able to have you interview me and just bring me back to the memory lane. So anyway, thank you for bringing me on here, and I can't wait to talk to you more about the stories that I have yet to uncover together with you.
Well, yeah. Wonderful to have you with us, Myra. And Angela Spring, see you in the comments. Great to have you here.
Hi, Angela.
Thank you so much. If you want to connect with Myra, I'm dropping her LinkedIn link here. Find her on LinkedIn. That's the best place to connect with her. And that's going to give you then access to everything that you are going to want to know, to follow her and to get on her newsletter and all those things. But we'll drop some of those links in the show notes for you as well. If you're listening to the podcast, just head over to the show notes to grab all of those things. So, Myra, you're going to talk to us about this shared experience that we all have. And that is getting lost in the comparison trap, where we are so busy following all the cues outside of ourselves, trying to scramble and keep up with everybody else around us, that we lose that important red thread of who we truly are and what really matters to us. And your journey with this started at a very young age. So take our listeners back and share with them the story you shared with me about growing up in your family.
Yeah. So for me, it's been my childhood. Let me go back to my childhood years. I grew up in Bangladesh, And, I grew up with the English as a second language. And when I came to this country with, what about like, that was 20 years ago. And one of the things that I learned is that when I came to this country is that how much people want to be the strive for belonging, right? Wanting to belong and wanting to be part of something. It's really strong because cultural differences can play a huge part in your identity, in who you are and how you get perceived and how you want to feel accepted, right? So I grew up in a family, it's a big family, and I grew up with two brothers. And one of the things that I been tracing, as I call it the red thread, is that there's always this yearning for to belong, to feel accepted. And as the only daughter, I think in our cultural society is that men are more rewarded. Men are being more like they're, if they're doctors, they're engineers, they're being more, they're as if they feel like they're being more visible. And we have to earn this place. We have to earn this recognition. And when I started being into my, going into my career, and I noticed that that's sort of what I was doing, seeking approval from my family has also swept into the corporate world, always trying to prove myself, always trying to create this next step, the recognition that I needed, so what can I do better? Like, what can I do? Always kind of pushing myself, to get that next accolade. And I think that part.
I'm
Yeah.
going to pause you right here because let's talk about this family
Yeah.
dynamic thing for a minute, because this is an origin story, friends, for many of us. The first step to healing is identifying and being really true with yourself about the source of the pain and of the problem. And I think that Myra is naming something that is often talked about in Asian families, but it is not exclusive to any particular culture or tribe. Many
Yes.
of us in our
Yes.
childhoods grew up being compared to our siblings, to our cousins, to our neighbors, children,
Oh.
whatever.
And that's the part that I was actually learning, that I'm not alone in this. A lot of it has nothing to do with being brown or black or whatever race I am. A lot of people go through that. It was fascinating when I was learning even about my clients, um, and that can be really, really deep. That type of seeking approval and always wanting to feel loved and being kudos and, patting on your back is really, really strong. And
Well, and it also teaches
yeah.
us, our parents, as
Mhm.
parents, we don't mean to. I mean, I can say this raising my own children.
Yeah.
It teaches us to look outside of ourselves, to look around us, to make that comparison and say, "Am I
Correct.
keeping up?" And now you layer social media on top of that, where children
It's
are
even
receiving
worse.
these messages 24/7, and then as young adults, they're receiving it 24/7. And then as
Right.
parents themselves, I mean, I even felt that comparison. I remember this very clearly. I never felt this as strongly anywhere else in my life, as in my career or anything, as I did as a new parent. As a new parent,
Right.
I felt so much need to look at what everybody else around me was doing and make sure that I was keeping up. I
Mhm.
was on trend as a parent. I was giving my kids access to all the right play groups, all the right this, all the right that, scheduling out
Mhm.
a full
Mhm.
life for them, all of these things that nobody did when I was a kid. But somehow that was the new social standard. And I felt compelled to compare myself and hold myself accountable to match it.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because the society around us can set a level of standard that we don't understand. We haven't even we have the chance to accept it or understand it. We just go with it. Go like, oh, that must be our standard, before we even define our own standards, right? So I think that most people, until they reach at a level of like in their 40s or in their 30s, that's when they start to question that, whose standard am I living with? Is this my own?
What a question, friends in the comments, friends listening to the show. Have you asked yourself this very powerful question? Whose standard are you living?
Yeah, it's and that's one of the things that I will, in my work, in my profession, I'm not, I notice that I don't take answers or whoever tells me readily, like, okay, I just accept whatever they told me. I need to challenge whatever beliefs or values they put on the table, because I need to be able to understand and discern, where's that coming from? Is this your belief, or have you inherited that belief over time?
Well,
And
one of the things
yeah.
I want to ask you about, and to help our listeners, is the change moment story for you. When people have a very powerful question like that they sit with, whose standard am I living? There's usually an impetus. There's something that leads them to that place. And often it's a very deep, dark journey because we have the mountaintops, the peaks, and we have the deep valleys, and it's often a deep valley moment. What brought you to that level of reflection, Myra?
Well, I think it's taken a long time for me to talk about this publicly, because you have to come to terms with it, and there's grieving process and there's healing process that goes with it. But and for me, it's the turning point when, I've had very it's you're starting to get me emotional about it right now as I'm thinking about it, and that's the part. I think the turning points in life, they tell you something when it happens in your story. And these are major turning points, like getting married, or, a family member didn't show up to your wedding, that meant everything to you. That meant the whole world to you, but they didn't show up. That was one of my turning point, when I realized that how deep of a hurt of, that lack of empathy and passion and compassion can always make you want to seek for more in your career, in your life, with your spouse, with your clients, you name it, right? So that can seep into your identity. The other turning point I had was when I had a medical emergency, not for me personally, but one of my family member, very close to me, who had, a life-threatening urgency. And that's when I started, those turning points gave me clues of who I was and who I was becoming.
Wow. Yeah.
Who I was becoming. So it's not always the highs and the lows, but you got to look at both things, the high points, the low points in your life, and the turning points. Those leads to your red thread. A lot of people don't take the time or pause to see how they connect. They tell you something.
So we're going to talk about the red thread in a minute. Angela adds here that her divorce was what really had her in the right headspace to ask this deeper question of whose standard.
Yes, it's usually. Yep, it's usually a big turning point in your life that gives you a moment of, wait a minute, was that my standard, or was somebody else pushing me towards living that standard, right? And
Hey,
unfortunately,
Lisa.
yeah. Hi. I love the conversation lighting up in there.
I will say that for me, again, professionally, I I had a very different experience. The real challenge, the biggest challenges, the biggest struggles of my life came in parenting, and trusting myself.
Mm,
Really trusting myself in parenting, but that moment that really became the red thread moment for our, not just me, but for our family as a whole, was when my oldest daughter had a mental health crisis, that we
yeah.
needed to go to counseling, we needed family therapy, we needed help collectively around that. And it really was that moment where we had to all ask ourselves, whose standards are we living? Who are we choosing to
Wow.
be versus who do we really need to be
Hmm.
for one another? And we ended up changing a lot of things about the way we operated as a family as a result of that. But it was very intense. It was very sad at the time. It was a struggle in the moment.
Sure.
But the beauty of struggle is you
Yes.
can emerge on the other side stronger.
Yeah. And we need that struggle. We need those struggles in order for us to, I think, to shape the perspective of the world. And it also gives us an opportunity to stand in our own beliefs that we
Yes.
hold, because if you agree with everything that goes on, whether it's your family member, relatives, or clients that tells you like, hey, just agree with me, then you don't have a spine, you don't have a center that you could, defend. And
That's
I think
true.
that when you don't have a center, when you don't have this grounded view of how you see the world, um, I think it, again, it goes back, it moves us back to that comparison trap. It moves us, it shifts right back to where we, oh, here we go again, we're comparing ourselves. But if we are aware enough, we can catch ourselves like, no, this is my core philosophy, this is what I live by. And how do you live by? Because I can see all the things that I've um, done by other standards, what it brought me. It didn't bring me happiness. It didn't bring me satisfaction. It didn't bring me all the things that I would, how it makes me feel about myself.
Well, here's the thing that I experienced when I was in my crisis of parenting, but I see in clients, I see people
Mhm.
experiencing this, and that is trying to borrow it from somewhere else instead of looking within.
Right,
When what we've been trying fails, we just continue to look outside of ourselves and borrow from someone else. And there's
right.
so much, again, there's so much messaging on social media that 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 somebody with the answer exists out there. All you have to do is find them. And that is not your philosophy. Your philosophy is you need to turn within,
Yeah.
that the answer is the red thread. So explain to everybody a little bit about the red thread and about your own journey around identifying and naming your red thread.
So I have a definition of red thread, and which is it's the connective underlining, the connective tissue between that across your life experiences, your turning points, your high points and your low points of everything that has come across the breadth of your life experiences, whether it's career, whether it's relationships, whether it's a religion or culture, historical, those moments. There is a connective tissue. There is that connective thread. And that thread can lead you to whether, and I wish I had a way to see that when I was going through a career transition, where I was going through a pivot in my businesses, because everyone when I was going through, it's in the beginning of my business, I must have pivoted. I don't know how many times. I've lost count, but 7, 8 times. And I was recently telling a friend that the 9th time I'm not going to do it, because I'm not going to pivot just for the sake of pivoting. Just because I saw someone do it, a marketer told me to do it, or I saw another competitor who does similar things to me, where I felt that I need to make that shift. That's any pivot I do now, it needs to connect to my red thread. Because that's not a confirmation. That's, to me, is a conviction.
So talk to us about uncovering your red thread for our listeners that are intrigued and interested in that journey. What were some of the questions? What was the process that you used to help you uncover that?
Yeah, so I have I in terms of uncovering the red thread, I have a process of taking people through that. It's like, what are some of the defining moments that has happened in your life? And you can, break your life chapters into 5 chapters, for example. In those 5 chapters, you have your childhood, you have your early memories, or early childhood memories, and then you could have your adult phase, and then you have your career phase. So all those phases, you'll see that there is chapters in your life, and there's highs and your lows and turning points. So what I have is, sometimes I'll have my clients or people, friend who's going through a career pivot, is like, go through this exercise and just dump it. I want you to just word vomit whatever comes out. And through that, you can find the recurring themes. I can see it almost takes a person who's not connected to you, who's not involved in your life. It's kind of like I know it's kind of like a therapist, almost like, somebody who is not directly involved with your stuff already. You know what I mean? So I call it a mirror thread. I call it people who are candid mirrors.
Yes.
They're not close to your business. They don't know what's going on, but they can see from an outside what's going on.
Yes. And sometimes distance is the best clarity when it comes to things
100%.
like this.
Yeah, because we're all close to our own stuff. We can't really see the blind spots. And sometimes you'll have a client, I'm sure, Rita, that tells you like, oh, I didn't think that was so much of a big deal. And you're going, what? Did you see how much, like, what are you talking about? This is the stuff that this is the kind of stuff that people love about you. This is your genius. Why wouldn't you talk more about this? But they don't think of a big deal. They don't see it as much of it because it's so natural to them. They've been doing it since they were a kid.
Well, here's something other that's also really important that you haven't said out loud about the red thread, but is so important. And that is this focus on what your zone of genius is, because so much of our conditioning, when we start contemplating ourselves, is we look at all of our flaws. When we start looking at our history and our story, we're looking at all of the problem places and all of our flaws. But that is not the focus that you're encouraging people to take.
Well, now I will say, it depends on how you look at the flaws. Sometimes your weakness could be your strength. That is something that people look for. Like, for example, my red thread, like I said, the yarn and always this deep desire to belong and feel accepted is the very reason that I can help people the best way, because I can immediately see where they're trying to prove themselves, where they're trying to compromise and, you know, take on clients that they shouldn't be taking on, or they are creating a business where it's almost like they're creating a version of a job that they're recreating. I'll stop them, because the wrong business model, I don't care how profitable you are, the wrong model will lead you to a path of a major disconnect and dissonance, cognitive dissonance with yourself.
Right, right.
That's the worst kind of prison that you can build. Why would you want that? You can
But
have all
this
the
is
success. Yeah.
you're naming. I mean, it is a basic human need. And
Yes.
again, it's not a weakness if you were able to see the strength in it. And that is one of the very cool things about our weaknesses, that at the heart of every weakness, there is a strength hiding in there.
Yeah, there is. There is. And I think a lot of the times you need that outside perspective to reframe that for you. You can't see the reframe, right? It's hard to be able to reframe yourself, because a flaw is a flaw. Whereas, I see the flaw as like a gift. It's the best gift you can have, to give it to somebody, and for example, a recent client of mine who went through, this red thread exercise and excavation process with me, and we realized that, he grew up as an only child. So as an only child, there were many stories where he's, wanting to be part of a community and bringing, this collective understanding of how we do things together. And for his red thread leading to something, a business would be much more, that creates that kind of environment for people where they feel safe, they feel heard, and they feel like they belong in an environment where they can talk to each other as a creative, is something that he will never run out of. He will never run out of that kind of passion, because it's so ingrained in his system.
Right.
But he wasn't able to see that. He saw that as maybe that's not a special thing. That's not a gift. So for Zone of Genius is very interesting. It's hard to unpack by yourself.
So when we are talking about recognizing, becoming aware of this need to uncover your red thread, we said that, one of the things that might lead us to that is the pure exhaustion of just being on the chase all the time from all the external, like trying to keep up with everybody outside of us and not really being true to ourselves. With all the work that you do in this area, what are some of the other indicators that people might be experiencing in their own lives that would indicate to them that this is the bat signal, that they should be slowing down and doing this deeper reflection to identify their red thread?
The biggest symptom I can tell you is that we talk a lot about time in our business. We try to get people to save time, money, and all those things. I talk about, have you paid attention to your energy? We have become so accustomed to just keep going and keep pushing and keep you know what?
Grind. They call
just
it
grind.
The grind.
Yeah. So the hustle culture, right? And the hustle culture did a really good damn job of teaching us how to hustle. you know, and not ask the question that if I went to this job or if I worked at this environment, how did that energy, did I feel it? And there's two types of energy. There's one energy that I just love. I don't feel mentally drained. I feel physically drained, but I don't feel mentally drained. And there's the other type of energy that you're not only physically drained, but you're mentally so exhausted that you're not looking forward to doing it the next day. So like,
It's so interesting, Myra, because you are naming something that I truly recognize, but I've never really thought about it in this way. And you are 100% right about this.
yes, yes. I mean, you will see speakers like Bernard Burchard, where I'm not commenting on his business stuff, but like he said once that he could be on the stage for 14 hours speaking to public about all types of performance thing, and not get tired about it. So talking about a problem that you feel so emotionally connected to it, and you know that you can not only solve that problem, but you have overcome that in so many different ways that you can help others, you'll never get tired of that.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And I think that's a really easy, friends. Myra is just giving us a really easy test that we can ask ourselves, an energy test at the end of any
Audit.
task, day, relationship. So I've worked hard, but am I still mentally engaged and energized when I think about doing this again, or am I not? In that mental signal is telling you something about the level of alignment that is or is not present for you.
Okay, you said the most important word and the most cliche, unfortunately. It's called the alignment. You have no idea how much that word weighs in everything. That word weighs a lot. And I remember after in COVID, people lost businesses. But in fact, I was the busiest during COVID. I had more projects that I could handle. The problem was that even though I was getting paid well, there were most of it, I would say 70% of those projects were draining.
Oh.
They were draining. They were not challenging me to hold the standard of operating in my zone of genius. And I can immediately tell when I am out of my zone of genius because I don't feel energetically excited. I don't feel lit up. I don't feel there's something to look forward to where I know that I can lead the transformation for someone, right? Because no matter what you sell, whether product or service, at the end of the day, if you can lead someone from where they are to where they're going, it's the best feeling as a human being. Am I right or not? Like,
no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Have you seen your clients when where they have started and where they ended up with you, and you see that they are no longer the same people, they're no longer the same person? That's the best feeling.
So when somebody is having this, they're doing this internal reflection and they're paying attention to their energy and they're recognizing that that energetically this is a mismatch for them. What's the next step? Where do you go to from there? Is it you just abandon? So you sort of walk away, or are there a series of questions you should be asking yourself? Is that a point to go deeper? Like what is the most effective response when you've identified you know the one of the places? What do you need to do with that?
That's a really good question. And, I don't, uh, again, I have my own methodology and framework to have people go through that, where I do founder fit, founder origin fit. Is it a fit? Does it align with your story? That's the first thing. The second one we talk about is experiential fit. How does this experience have created a worldview for you in terms of like how it's aligned with your worldview, and also the type of work, not just clients, the type of work that feels that energy, not that energy draining and all that. So I have a series of questions for that. And then we look at the market fit. What is not just, it's kind of like people confuse that with ikigai, but ikigai is also like, like what will the world pay you for? What will, what makes you happy? What makes you more thrive in an environment? Things like that. So it's not quite that. My work is more involved around, if you want to make this commercially viable, you want to monetize on something, you better do the work of the foundation where you understand the alignment that goes along with it. Because again, like I said, you could create a business that's really successful, but if at the end of the day it requires more of you to do the draining work, then to me that is not a sustainable business. That's not sustainable for energy. you know a lot of the times we have trouble seeing that, because at the end of the day, if uh, you're still profitable, you're still making money, you're still paying the bills and everything, your expenses are all paid off, but there's a part of you that it just doesn't feel like leaving that spaciousness in your calendar and creating more space for creativity, then those are the things that I look for.
Well, I can't help but think about, I mean, you're working mainly with entrepreneurs or, business owners. I'm thinking about career professionals. I'm thinking
That
about
too. Yes.
I'm thinking about some of my clients who
Mhm.
complain regularly because people just don't show up to work. The call out rates
Oh,
are extremely high, the absenteeism rates. And to me, that is an example of people don't have the mental energy.
no, they don't.
Oftentimes more so than it being the physical thing, it's the mental, they don't have the mental energy for the work. And
Right.
so I think that we often as professionals, we look outside of ourselves in those moments and say, this company is no longer right for me, or this job is no longer right for me. And we look
Yes.
at culture fit and we look at experience, our personal experience, but we don't look inside and ask these deeper red thread questions to really understand how we've evolved, who we are, and again, our zone of genius before we go looking for the next job or before we walk away from this one, really understanding the zone of genius that we want to be operating in. You're shaking your head. You see this as well.
I, I'm shaking my head. I'm laughing because I'm actually testing something, with the same red thread workbook that I've created for my clients, is with a friend who was laid off recently. And she was talking to me, and I was like, we were having a conversation around what to do next, and whether to update the resume and LinkedIn. And I said, I'm sorry, but before you do any of that, I need you to go through this first. Answer these questions, because those questions may lead you to something that you may not want. You may completely want a different environment. It has nothing to do with the title itself, but you might be pivoting in a completely different shape, different manner. So she was thankful she's actually going through it, and she's going to help, tell me what she finds out. But I wish I had that.
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Well,
you're
I
not
can't help but notice
defaulting.
that we're coming up on the hour or our
Oh
time
my goodness.
here. And so we're going to have to think about wrapping this up. But I'm thinking, Myra, you're going to have to come
Yeah.
back in the comments and give us an update on this, because we do have a lot of professional listeners in our audience who, might want to be connecting with you and testing,
Oh, I would
giving you
love this. I
more
would love that.
opportunity to test. As
Mhm.
this has really become the challenge of the current workplace, right? Of really finding this place where people understand and feel like they are operating in a place that is energizing and
Yeah.
not depleting. And
Yeah.
it's bigger than just culture. It's bigger than just job duties, right? It is this larger context of really understanding self.
So I will wrap this up with you with this one thing where I say, no, we have the choice. We have the choice to no longer default by career or by business. We have the choice. And I think we forget that we have more power within than we give ourselves. It helps
Yes.
us, that clarity helps us position ourselves better, defend our arguments better. But if you don't know what to argument against, then how would you defend yourself?
And so,
Right?
as you said earlier, friends, this is the invitation. You likely are going to find yourself, if you're not already there, in a place of needing to do this deeper reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Do not assume you can do this alone. Make the small investment in getting the guidance and the
Yes.
help that you need. If you want to change the
Mm-hmm.
energy exchange experience that you have, if you really want to find alignment, sometimes you've got to pause and go deeper. And you're probably going to need somebody who is not emotionally entangled in your own story,
That's right.
in
That's
your
right.
own experience, to
Mm-hmm.
help you. And that's why you look outside of yourself. And lucky to you have Myra now in your circle of friends. So make sure that you connect up with her on LinkedIn. We're also in the show notes. She has a newsletter, so you can follow her journey. You can learn her ideas from her. You can maintain that connection. So make sure that you head over to the show notes and grab the link and sign up for her newsletter. Myra, you're going to have to come back. We're going to have to continue this conversation, because
I feel like I feel like we need a part 2 or something, because yeah. Thank you
there's
so
so
much.
much more that could be
Yes.
said. So whether you are in a career transition, whether you are in your entrepreneurial journey, whether you're just struggling with some imposter syndrome, these are all places where this idea of really following your red thread to lead you to your zone of genius could be the change that really lights you up again. And we would love to see that for all of our listeners. So be sure that you share this episode with a friend. Come back again next week. I can't wait to welcome you back. We have a good friend of mine from LinkedIn, Valerie Gordon, who's going to talk with us. And she's one of the original people to write a book and talk about the story we tell ourselves. So it's going to be a good one for sure. Myra, this has been such a joy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. This is one of the conversations I won't forget. So I appreciate it.
And for our LinkedIn friends, Myra and I will be out on LinkedIn. We'll be responding to your comments. Thanks for joining us in the comments today. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. If you love this episode, leave us those 5 stars and be sure to share this with a friend. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. See you back here next week.